Who knows what today is? What day of the month have we got today? 25th. 25th. 4 more months to Christmas. Yeah. Who's finished their shopping? No, me neither. Terrified. Some of you are beginning to shake. I love Christmas, though. Christmas is really great. We went through a phase of questioning all of it as a family, really interesting to do with younger kids. It's like, we don't think we're going to do Christmas this year. I'm not sure about the whole pagan origins and the whole gift-giving thing, and it was quite a difficult thing to do. But we're back on track, so love Christmas. Looking forward to this year. I think one of the things that are quite special about it is just that expectancy of sort of remembering Jesus coming, but also the expectancy of the gifts. I love giving, I love receiving gifts, but we do a strange thing in the West. We wrap them all up and we kind of hide them in this paper and put a bow on them, or however decorative you want to get in your family. And there's this expectancy. You look under the tree and there are these boxes there and you're wondering, oh, is that for me? That's the big one, or it's the small one, or it's very flat, it's a check. Anyway, that's yeah, there's an expectancy. So this morning I'm here kind of sharing my life, and it's kind of a journey of expectancy. So yeah, sit back and enjoy it. So I was born in Johannesburg, South Africa. I grew up in a family that went to church. They went to a Roman Catholic church and got really good teaching there. I kind of was aware of God. He was somewhere out there, and we did all this stuff for him, and that was kind of made sense. Tried to read my Bible through, kind of got shipwrecked when I hit Numbers. It's just this book of accounting. It's really heavy. So that was sort of the end of that. But yeah, really had a good foundation. And then I got to secondary school, and one of my classmates on a sports camp came up to me and said, "John, are you born again?" Never heard of what born again was. And I said, "Well, what is born again?" And he said, "Well, if you're not born again, you won't go to heaven." And I thought, well, that's pretty serious. And I knew I was going to heaven because I went to church. You know, that just kind of like, sort of, I thought. But I thought, well, just in case I'm wrong, I'll hedge my bets and I'll do the born again thing as well. So I got born again. If that's a weird language for you, that's from John chapter 3, where Jesus says there's this radical transformation that's needed in you to come into the kingdom, and that's what God offers. So I did that and had a really good walk with God. I ended up going into the mission field after school. Spent a time in YWAM, Youth with a Mission, down in Cape Town on the beautiful south coast of South Africa. The little place we stayed was called the Surf Inn. It was an old 1950s hotel, and it just had that vibe. It was really good. But I remember one of the teachings there, which really, really struck me. One of the guys came in and he was teaching us how to listen to the still, small voice of God. And he had these stories. He said, he'd be driving along in his car and he'd sense the Lord saying, turn left here. And he'd take a left and like, okay, drive on there. Like, take a right there. Okay, stop in front of this house and go and knock on the door. And you'd do that and miracles would happen. Maybe you'd pray for the person for healing and they'd be healed, or there'd be a great need and you'd be able to minister to them. And I just thought, wow, that's the kind of Christian life I want to walk. So that's sort of been with me all the time. What does God want? Can't say he's ever led me like that. I do try and hear out for that. Turn left, turn right, stop here, buy a donut. But learning that has actually saved my life. A few years later, just after being married, I was living in Johannesburg, and I was just driving off to the shops. And between where we were living and the shopping center was this really major road. And there were 3 lanes coming from my right, a middle island which was thickly overgrown. You couldn't see what was beyond. 3 lanes coming from the left, and then on the other side was the shopping center. So I was parked there, and the traffic lights turned green, and I started driving, and I was almost all the way over my side, and this voice said in my head, "Stop." And it was pretty urgent. And I guess because of the training that I'd had and heard these amazing stories, I didn't have an argument with God. I just put my foot on the pedal, on the brake. And at that moment, maybe half a second later, this car comes booming down through the red traffic lights, exactly where my car would have been. He spared my life. It was the most amazing thing. And there's this Yeah, praise God. Absolutely. There is a place of expectancy that God speaks. You know, Jesus says, my sheep hear my voice. So if you feel you haven't had that, or you're not, you know, God still, have an expectancy. God is a God who speaks. From YWAM, from the mission field, I went into Bible school, and that was really good, really, really amazing, learning so much about God. But after about a year of that, I started sensing and hearing messages, go into all the world and preach the good news. Who will go? Who will I send? And I started praying about this, and it really stood out. Any meeting I went to, the message was about go, or I heard out of that message a sense of go. So I felt I should pray, fast. Took a week of just praying through that, asking God. Heard nothing. Lived on redbush tea. If any of you haven't had redbush tea, really good stuff. Very, very healthy. And at the end of that week, I was at a home group, and I went to the home group leader and I said, I've been praying all this week and fasting, and God hasn't said anything. I felt him stirring, and I've heard these messages, but I don't know anymore. How does it work? And he said, well, where do you think God might be leading you? And I said, well, I kind of have a heart for German-speaking people. So that could be Germany, because there are German-speaking people there. Or Namibia, which used to be a German colony. And the guy said, Namibia, yes, God called him to Namibia many, many years ago. And he sort of worked there and ministered there. And God used Isaiah 58 for that. I thought, Isaiah 58, don't know what's in there. Anyway, I opened up my Bible to Isaiah 58, and there in the margin, in my own handwriting, and I really don't remember putting it there, with the word Namibia, ? And it's like, wow, that's amazing. So really, really incredible, and praise God. And I thought, yeah, I'm going to Namibia, but I kind of don't know how. 3 days later, I get a letter through the post. This isn't email, this is way back when. Through the post, sent from a different country, and it arrived there saying, John, we're YWAM, Youth with a Mission Namibia. Would you like to come and be on staff in our next school? So, miracle, absolute miracle. Also a miracle that the postal system even got the letter there. 5 days in total from when it was written, back when I was fasting. Absolute miracle. So, yeah, and in Namibia, I got to know my German-speaking wife. So maybe God called me to a person rather than a people. So got engaged, got married, moved back to Johannesburg, kind of entered the normal work sphere. I kind of wasn't sure what God wanted for me in full-time ministry, so I studied and got a job, had my firstborn, and from there we moved up to the Isle of Man, which is really, really beautiful place, really good for young children. Got involved in church there. It was a really good time. But after a while, there was this expectancy building up again. Sort of kind of like, okay, what we're doing here, should we be here? And my wife got especially kind of twitchy. I think the grey weather and the cold and the horizontal rain sort of got to her. I was just more sort of, one foot in front of the other, plod on. So we investigated Australia, we investigated Canada. None of those really seemed an option. Maybe Germany, German-speaking. But they wouldn't allow homeschooling. We had home educating our kids at that stage. Thought about Switzerland, similar situation. None of it seemed right, but there was still this urgency. And so we thought, what do we do? How do we move into or move through that expectancy to what God is wanting without knowing what God is wanting? You know, it's that kind of call to Abraham. Abraham, go somewhere. Just go somewhere. It's like, thanks, give me more info. So what we decided to do, we would put the house on the market, just shift that so we wouldn't be tied. But it took 2 years to sell. 2 long years, and we were seeking God, and in that time, again, not knowing where to move to. But then eventually it did. I got a job interview here in Bristol, and that's the company I'm with now as well. So that, what is building up in expectancy, if God is doing something in your heart, he will bring it to completion. But sometimes it takes a long haul, okay? But it is worth it. He will fulfill his word to you. Moved to Bristol, really, really, really good time. Had a great big homeschooling community here. Great for the kids, good for my wife being connected, and the weather's much better than up north, really is. But then in 2015, no, it is, it really is. Well, this is your up north, Gareth. Anyway, your fault. 2015 or 2016, my wife had a cough. She struggled with this cough for a year and eventually went along and had it checked out. And they did some scans and then some x-rays. And she got a diagnosis that she had a rare lung disease, something they knew very little about. We looked it up, how long does it mean for sort of life expectancy, and it was kind of anywhere between 5 years and 20 years, and kind of we were hoping for the 20-year option. But we had the 5-year option, and in May 2021, she passed away, went home to be with God. And yeah, as you can imagine, probably quite a horrific time. Initially, you're just walking stunned and trying to figure out life, and then quickly it just became I'd say probably a grey year for me, just a year of plodding on, going to work, eating, going to church, serving in church, just kind of nothingness, just an emptiness. And that's just a natural part of mourning, it really is. But I would kind of put it down to there was just a lack of expectancy. There was a sense of what counted most in my life is now finished. And what am I doing here on earth? If it wasn't for having children, it would have been, God, you forgot me as well. Come back and take me home. I'd like to get the reward now. I'd like to be on streets of gold dancing. But it wasn't. It was just this grey year. And sometimes our years are grey. Sometimes we are seeking God and he seems distant. They call it a desert place, and it's just dry and boring and bland, nothing exciting on the horizon. Maybe you're there. But after about a year or so, that started changing. Things just started adapting a little bit in what God was doing. There's a bit more life, a little bit more light. It was just subtle changes. And I remember in my quiet times, I usually sit down and just write to God. If I try and pray to God, my mind wanders too much. If I'm writing, I'm having to focus. And I was discovering that my expression to him was more and more taking hold of the love that I still had, which had no recipient anymore, and I could actually place that on God. So in my quiet times, I was almost having these emotional, wow, I love you, you're so incredible, you're so amazing, hold me kind of moments with God himself, which is something that he allowed and he sort of guided me into. And I just want to say that if you are in that dark place, there is a place of taking that need that is in you and not going, take the need away, which we do. We absolutely do. We do ask God to sort the problems or fix the family or heal the disease or all that. And that's right that we do. But I think there's also a place of going, this need, Lord, I want to just translate it into energy for you and crying out for you. David says in the Psalms, as the deer pants for the streams of water, so my soul longs for you, God. There's kind of like this physical need that translates into a very real, God-focused, spiritual, real life need. And then that was really good. And then the third year, I would say this last year has been actually really good. A big part of it has been being here in Life Church, connecting especially with the men, being part of the men's group and the men's motivated group, finding new friends, strengthening old friendships. And that has been really powerful. Really, really grateful for you guys and for what God has been doing. But then I went on a Christian camp with some friends a couple of weekends ago. I was worshiping there, really, really good worship. And as I worshiped, I suddenly had this picture of my wife in front of me in my mind. And then at the same time, I heard God say to me, John, you need to say goodbye. What? I thought I'd said goodbye. I said goodbye to her body 3 years ago. And like, what do you want with me, God? It really rattled me. And I ended up just absolutely in tears. I went to the front for prayer, and my nose running and my eyes are running. I was just this mess, just the whole face leaking. And I just eventually I thought, no, I need to go out of the meeting. I've run out of tissues. I just stood under a tree there in the shade, just bawling and saying, God, why did you take my wife away? Why did you not ask me or consider me? Why did you sort of leave my children without a mum? That's just, it's so unfair. And I think in true God style, he doesn't give informational answers to questions like that. You know, he doesn't explain the science behind things or the greater world plan behind things. What he does is he offers his presence. And I just really, really felt him in that moment, that he was there. And I could come to the point of saying, okay, God, you took her, you took Kirsten, but from my side now, I give her, I release her. You know, whatever I'm holding in my heart, I give her to you. So I booked in for a prayer slot the following morning, which was something that the camp was offering, and just chatted it through with two really, really amazing guys. And kind of the conclusion about what was going on with all of this is that I think God was saying, John, my work is complete. You know, what I did in your life and in your children's lives through their mother, through your wife, it's done. It's good. It's beautiful. It doesn't need any more adding to. It doesn't need you to try and milk it for more value anymore. It's good. You can look forward and you can move on. And I think God really wants me to walk forward. And I've got a real expectancy for that. But he wants me to walk forward without kind of looking over my shoulder the whole time, seeing what had happened before. It's almost like an artwork I remember doing at school. I did art as a final year subject. And there was a still life, and it was in the middle of the classroom, and the desks were arranged around it. And I was sitting there drawing it, and kind of in the way was the guy in front of me also drawing it, so I incorporated him into the artwork. It was good fun. It worked out really well at the end. But I remember coming to the point in this artwork where I was thinking, how much is enough? At what point is this actually a completed work? I can just carry on with pen to paper or pencil to paper, and eventually it'll just be over-engineered, and kind of it detracts from the beauty. But if I know when to stop, and I think that's what God's saying, stop. Maybe saying to you in something in your life, that's done. It's complete. It was good, maybe it was difficult, but what God has been doing there is complete, and he has something more for you. So, yeah, that was a really, really good and powerful realization. So I think the band could come up already. And I've just got 2 points to round it off with. And the question is, how do we live in expectancy? How do we change our lives just from humdrum, one step in front of the other, to God has got something. He's still got something for me. Whether I have a day or 100 years left to live, God is wanting to work. So 2 points. And I think the first one is that our view of God shapes our expectancy. If I think in my life God has A, B, C, D to do, and once I'm finished with D, that's it, I might as well go home. And if I fail at B, then, well, my whole life's failed. I don't think that's a view of God that is true. If you look up at the stars in Bristol, you might be able to notice a few constellations, the odd planet. But if you go to Africa on a clear night where you are far from any pollution or any city in the middle of the bush, and you look up at those stars, there are billions of stars. It's the most, anybody who's been there, it's the most incredible experience. You found out why the Milky Way is called the Milky Way. It's just this white smudge of stars all over the sky. And I see God like that. God has a Milky Way of opportunity for you. There is more than you could ever ask or imagine for that he is still wanting to do in your life. No matter where you are, no matter who you are, no matter how much you think you have left, he has so much more. So that's the first one. And then I think the second one is don't shortcut the difficulty. Don't shortcut the pain. Don't shortcut the challenges, because those are the moments in life where God is, I think, is working the deepest. Like I could take that love that I had no human destination, and I could give that to God and really grow in depth there. I think that is what's available. But often what we do is we shortcut it. We binge watch another series, or we go to the fridge again, or in my case, yet another mug of cocoa. I work from home, and I think half of my working hours are between the kettle and the loo. So, but if we just pause ourselves, pause the craziness, and focus on the need, and taking that and giving that to God and focusing on Him, I think that is a place where He opens our eyes to look beyond the horizon and see there's so much more. So thank you. That's it. That's part of my story. Be blessed.
Thank you.